There's something really powerful about showing up live exactly how you are, but it's a way of coming across to your audience, which makes them think, oh my goodness, that is a real person. She knows what she's talking about, and they feel reassured that I can help.
Imagine hosting a LinkedIn Live and seeing hardly anyone show up. You put in all the effort, you hit that go live button and fucking nothing. But what if I told you there's a way to pack your virtual room every single time with engaged attendees who actually want to hear what you have to say? That's exactly what today's guest has cracked the code on. Welcome to the Master Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Deirdre Martin, triple certified, award-winning, international best-selling author and your go-to expert for helping entrepreneurs hit their first 100k or even their first million. Today, I'm joined by Becky Whitaker, a recovering legal copywriter turned powerhouse messaging coach. When her personality escaped from legal copywriting, she pivoted her business to help female founders find their authentic voices. Becky empowers them to break free from societal norms and express their services online in the perfect way to attract their dream clients. When she's not helping women make waves in their industries, she's busy cuddling her dog and ignoring her husband. In this episode, you'll discover the real reason LinkedIn Live is a game changer for your service-based business, some proven strategies to skyrocket your registration numbers, how to keep people engaged so they don't drop off midstream, and the biggest mistake people make when they go live so you can avoid them. Okay, let's get going. Becky, welcome. Such a pleasure to have you on the Master Your Business podcast.
Oh, this has been a long time coming. It really has, but I'm so happy I finally made it. Yay!
Yay! Well, the reason I brought you on is because you had me come and do a LinkedIn Live with you, and you had so many freaking bums and seats for your regular fortnightly LinkedIn Live. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my clients and I would love to hear how you make that happen. So, first off, before we dive into that, tell me what makes LinkedIn Live different from other live streaming platforms like Instagram or YouTube or any of those. So, why LinkedIn first off?
LinkedIn is because that's where mainly my customers are, to be honest with you, and it's just a really nice way of getting yourself out there and becoming like really obvious within your audience. So yeah, I love doing LinkedIn lives. They're very easy and natural, and yeah, they're great.
And for your service business, right? And you're freaking
Mhm.
epic at what you do. People can go and check you out. All of your links are in the show notes. But tell me about the key benefits of hosting LinkedIn Lives for business owners and service providers in your experience.
I think it's a really good way of connecting with people. When I first started doing them, and I did them for about a year actually, I was a bit like, oh, am I getting any business from this? But there's something really powerful about showing up live exactly how you are. And I had so many people say to me, oh my goodness, I really love that live. I always have it on when I'm listening to a coffee. People were even listening into it on their runs, for goodness sake. I mean, insane. But it's a way of coming across to your audience, which makes them think, oh my goodness, that is a real person. She knows what she's talking about, and they feel reassured that I can help them.
Mhm. You totally inspired me to show up live on LinkedIn every Friday. I do it now every Friday at 1 p.m. And the one thing that I have a thing about is what will I talk about this week? So, do you have tips for deciding on the right topic for LinkedIn Lives?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, for me, I only ever did live with a guest. So that makes it easier for sure, because then you can focus on that person and you can interview them. So I was interviewing people within the legal industry, only interesting ones. I was not talking to anybody boring. That was actually quite a challenge, to be fair. But I did find plenty of interesting people to talk to. So yeah, but I think what you've got to do is always think back to what your customer wants to see. Like maybe you're asked loads of questions about a specific aspect of your services all the time, and if one person's asking a question, chances are there's a whole lot more people that are asking that same question. So yeah, focus on those kind of topics that your audience want from you.
Mm. That makes total sense. And so I'd love to hear what your thoughts are then in terms of having guests on and how to get the guests and if you have more than one guest at a time or if people can then ask questions live. Tell me how does all of that work?
Yeah, so I only ever really had one guest. I had a couple. I had two Helens at once. They were a challenge.
The same time?
Yeah, two Helens at the same time. It was just bonkers, and that was just fine. They worked together, so they just bounced off each other really well. It was hilarious, that episode. But yeah, I only really like to manage one at a time, and I always make sure that I encourage people to ask questions. So I mention it in the beginning, say please let us know, drop them in as you go, and we'll get to them. And then we always have time at the end for questions as well. Literally just forgotten what you asked me. It was literally about that, wasn't it? About how to ensure feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, it was like if there's a panel or Q&As, like, and do you find that people do ask questions throughout, or?
Yeah, they do. And it was lovely because I was doing them so regularly all the time. People within the industry were like, oh, so and so's on this week. This is really cool. I'm going to go and ask that person that question because I've wanted to speak to them. And do you know what? It was so easy just getting people on because it's like everybody loves it. Like when you asked me to come on here, I was like, yeah, of course I will. I'm going to come and talk about myself. That's great. Everybody loves this shit. So it was really easy. And also, the sneaky thing about it is if you find somebody that you actually really want to work with, you drop into their DMs and go, hey, do you want to come on my podcast? You can then like start nurturing them really sneakily then. And then you might even get them to become a client. You never know.
That's an idea, yes. Usually I do it the other way around. I invite my clients to come on my podcast, so it feels like they get an extra bit of value, you know, and extra promotion. And that works. Like some of my clients who've been on my podcast, because my podcast is a mix of guest and solo, whereas my lives are all solo, but that's open to change, you know. But yeah, some of my clients have messaged me afterwards to say, I got a client from being
no
on
way.
the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's it. It's amazing.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me. It works really well.
Yeah. And so, okay, you've got your live, you've decided the format, you've decided who's coming. What's the best way to promote it so that you get registrations and people showing up for it?
Yeah, and this is really key because with the best will in the world, people would not remember your event because they just won't. So you got to promote it. And my VA and I had come up with a beautiful system. It was perfectly seamless. So she says. So once the guest was booked, we had a series of automated emails that went out to that guest. This was just things like, this is the date, this is the time, this is the link, this is what we're going to talk about. These are some questions I've got in mind for you. And just any kind of housekeeping stuff like, you know, microphone and tech, that kind of thing. And then once people started to then register for the event and say they were coming, I then made sure to message them the day of and the day before as well, just to remind them it was coming up, and drop the link for them just to make it really easy so they knew where it was. And also to encourage them that if they couldn't make it live, then they could ask questions and I'd ask them during the thing. And that just worked so well. It was really great.
And so tell me, how did you share the link with the guests? Was it like a Zoom link? Was it a different kind of a link? Tell me how that works.
With LinkedIn Lives, you have to stream them via a third party. So I use StreamYard for that, which is really easy to set up. So as long as you've got your StreamYard link to your LinkedIn, you set your event up on LinkedIn about what you're going to talk about and any like banners with your guests and that kind of thing. And then within StreamYard, you then literally just select the event, and then that's where you get your link from that you can give to your guests. So that kind of behind the scenes stuff is really important to make sure that's all in place.
So for me, I use Restream. And what made you choose StreamYard over Restream, Becky? Or
I haven't heard of Restream, to be honest. I think somebody just mentioned StreamYard, and I was like, yeah, it's free. It seems to be easy to use. I'll just go with that. Fine.
So there's one function on Restream, and this was the reason why I chose it. And I'm curious, maybe you know or don't know whether StreamYard has this function as well. So with Restream, if you and I we could have done this with the podcast, but I didn't think that far ahead because I know you're epic live. What we should have done used Restream to do was stream live to LinkedIn, because it does that. But both of us can stream to our audiences simultaneously. Does StreamYard offer that as well?
With StreamYard, I think you can. So you can stream actually to YouTube if you want to, and then each person, whoever's on, as long as they're registered with StreamYard, can stream to their own LinkedIn as well. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that can happen.
Yeah, that's cool. And folks, if you're listening and you're thinking, oh, I want to grow my visibility, or you've got somebody on and whoever is on with you and they serve the same audience as you, it's a great way to get in front of their audience. Because sometimes what might happen is, like Becky and I, we don't serve exactly the same audience. We offer similar services, but we don't serve the same audience. But if we did, some of my audience might not want to buy from me, but they might want to buy from Becky because maybe they're just not suited to me. So do go and check out Becky in case that's you. But otherwise, it could be the same in reverse, right? So by streaming to each other's platforms, if you serve the same audience, even if it's in a different way, or even if it's with a competitor, it can help grow your audience and get people following you, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I always reminded my guests about this as well, because like it's kind of for them, like it's promotion for them. So it's like it's in their best interest really to make sure that you get enough eyes on you as possible. So it's kind of like tell people this is happening. And most of my guests were so good about it. They'd like reshare the event on LinkedIn and go, I'm speaking with Becky on this date, you know, come and find me, and got a lot of engagement that way, which was really, really good.
And like, what else did you do to get bums and seats though, Becky, in terms of the promotional bit? So you emailed the guest, you sent them the stuff. What did you do on LinkedIn itself, aside from messaging people once they've registered? How did you get them to register in the first place?
I just think it was me, to be honest. I think I was the draw. I think it was just me. They just wanted to be there.
I'm not
When you
surprised.
when you set up the event on LinkedIn, it just comes up automatically as a feed post. So that will happen straight away, which people can see. And then I would often, I'm just trying to think actually what my schedule was. So I would always do a post like the week before to say, this is my guest, this is what we're going to be talking about. And I do like a carousel as well, like about them, that kind of thing. I would also do something the day before to a reminder post that it was happening with some more visuals. And what else was I doing? I was also promoting it on my newsletter as well. So it worked really, really nicely because I was doing them every other week. So I'd say, this is the previous week. This is what we talked about. You can catch it either on my YouTube channel, Spotify, or I think it went out somewhere else as well. I'm trying to remember, wherever you get your podcasts. And then the following week it'd be like, and then this is the guest that's coming up. So it was like this kind of momentum of like events that were happening for people, and then that's how they bought into it, I think.
Mm. And can people watch the replays on LinkedIn if they've registered or not registered? Can they watch a replay if they don't show up live?
Do you know what? That's a really good question. And you can watch them, but I don't know if they're there forever. I'm not sure. But I really love doing them because, yeah, it's great doing podcasts and the fact you can edit stuff. But if you're running your business like on your own, you don't have much support. If you do a LinkedIn live and then it's just going to stream automatically to your YouTube and then literally save the file, upload it to your podcast, it's very little admin involved. There's no editing or faffing around, you know, and you've got a really good long form piece of content then that you can just chop up for social media. So I think it's just a really good way of getting video content out there fast, really.
Yeah, and you know what? I have to admit, I don't know if they're there myself either for a long
I'm
time.
not sure.
So I must go and check that, and I'll add it to the show notes, folks, once I've written them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll check that out and let you know, because I do know, I think people who've registered but haven't maybe shown up live can watch it, but I'm not sure otherwise how it works. So we'll see.
Yes.
I'll find out and let you know.
Find out.
Okay. And one of the big things I think, Becky, for any type of an event is the title and the description. And you are an expert copywriter. So tell me, what tips do you have for coming up with a really freaking compelling title that makes people go, holy shit, I need to be at that?
Yeah, and I think the same principles apply for the titles and also for like hooks for social posts as well. So you're going to want your intrigue, curiosity there, something that makes people go, what did I just read? You know, something that stops the scroll, stops the pattern. I really love questions, and I like being really controversial as well. So I think some of the titles I had, just one off the top of my head, was like 5 things you never knew about an employment solicitor, or things like that. Something that just makes people go, oh, that sounds interesting. I think I'll find out about that. There were definitely some more compelling ones that I'm going to check up on in a minute so I can remind myself what I said, because I'm sure there were some gold in there. How to earn more and work less, for example, that was one of them. So they were all quite like, interesting titles, and that is essential. As obviously, if you've got a really good guest with a massive following, you probably don't have to do too much, as they're going to want to come and see that person. But yeah, it's important. The number one, sorry,
No, go on.
the number one mistake that lawyers make. That was another one we had as well. Yeah, all sorts of things.
And what about the event description?
Yeah, the event description. I like to use bullet points, make it really easy for people to read. And you're going to want to talk about what people are going to get from it. So the transformation, what they're going to learn essentially after it. So just make sure that's really clear. And don't be too wordy either. You don't have to go on for ages. It can just be like, join us on this date. This is what we're going to talk about. This is what you're going to learn. Register, get yourself there.
And let's say in terms of the event then, so you kind of talked about, do you get leads from it? Do you get sales from it and that sort of thing? Did you use it as a way to drive traffic back to your email list or your website or anything like that? Like lead magnets, anything like that?
I wasn't at the time actually, but I should have done. I definitely should have done. If I'd have thought about it for longer, I would have done. But my business was at a much earlier stage then. But I just think it's one of those things that's just really, as you will know this, it really becomes something that's part of your brand. So it just becomes, just kind of fills your brand out more, and people get a bit more of a taste of you. And it's not just, you're not just like this faceless brand on the screen. I think it's so important.
That makes so much sense. And let's say with going live, Becky, did you go live at the same time every 2 weeks, or was it like, did you pick random times? Did you find a best day and time to go live, basically, is what I'm wondering for best.
Yeah, so I was doing Wednesdays, and lunchtime worked really, really well. So people just then got used to it. So it was like, right, Becky will be here every other Wednesday at lunchtime. And I tried to make it midday. I did have a few guests that were from the US, so we did have to push it back a little bit for them. But generally speaking, lunchtime was really good. And as I said, people just got into a routine then, and they'd be like having their lunch and listening in.
Mine are Fridays right now, but I may have to change to a Wednesday. Thanks for the tip. And let's say again with StreamYard, can you tell how many people are on the live then when they show up at your midday on Wednesdays? And if you can tell how they show up, how can you make sure they stay on and don't drop off during the event?
Yeah, so you do get the attendees that come up, and then obviously all the comments filter through as well. I think for me, and my guests actually used to get a bit nervous about this if I used to say to them like, oh, I've got about 50 people registered, and they'd go, oh, really? And then they'd get panicked about it. I'd be like, okay, well, no, don't worry, it's going to be fine, But I think sometimes like now, you and I are having this conversation, and we're not thinking about the people that are listening to it, right? It's just kind of a casual conversation. And that's the same for a LinkedIn Live as well. And once you start thinking about who's watching and what they might be thinking, that can really put you off your game a little bit. So my advice really would just to be as natural as possible. Make sure that what you're talking about is really interesting and you're engaging, and just go with it. Don't panic. Like if suddenly see people start dropping off, that I don't know, it feels horrible.
Yeah, it is. It's horrible because you're like, oh my gosh. And even when I go live, I'm like, I can see the numbers there, and then the numbers suddenly shoot up and then they drop off, and I'm like, what the fuck? What am I doing wrong here?
What did I say?
Like, throws me off my game. I'm like, oh, don't even look, Deirdre. Stop.
Don't look is my advice.
What would you say? So you talked about one of your titles for lawyers being 5 mistakes lawyers make, but what would you say are some of the biggest mistakes that people do make when they're running LinkedIn Lives or going live generally?
Oh, that's a really good one. What mistakes do people make? I think not having researched their guests potentially could be a massive mistake if they don't really know the person, or I don't really like to prep too much in advance because I am pretty good live and I'm good at thinking on my feet usually. But, not everybody is. And if you don't really have a good sense of who you're speaking to, that's going to come across like really obviously, and it's going to make you look really unprofessional as well. So yeah, definitely don't do that. And then when you have those awkward silences, I think as well, that could be really tricky. It's really lovely when you have somebody that you just bounce off really nicely with, and then you don't have the awkwardness. Like with us, this is flowing really nicely, but some people like talk over you a little bit, and then you're like, oh, yeah, that can be a bit awkward.
And like, do you find, because I know I'm inclined to do this sometimes, if you ask me a question and I'm thinking on my feet, I'll go off on a freaking tangent talking about something that I think is relevant to the question you've asked me and that I think people will want to hear, but I might go on and on and on, maybe a little bit more than I should or ought to. Do you find that happens? And if so, is that something that causes drop-offs?
That does happen. No, I don't tend to do it so much, but I had a lot of guests that did do this. And actually, I started saying to them before the event, I'd be like, right, if you go off on a tangent about something and it really isn't relevant, and we're probably going to nip this in the bud, so we're going to have like some kind of safe word that I'm going to say to you, and then you're just going to have to cut it off. I had this one guest that started talking about like a shark attack randomly, and I was like, okay, well, this is great, but it's not really what we're here to talk about. So I had to kind of like wrap that one up. But I think that can definitely affect your viewers if you suddenly start talking about something that's completely irrelevant.
Interesting. Anything else by way of mistakes that people make?
Mistakes that people make. Not having all your tech set up, that's really important. Obviously, make sure your microphone's of good quality. Make sure that everything is working and connected as it should be. That is key as well. Make sure you're on time for it all. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head because I haven't seen that many bad ones, to be honest with you. But I think people that go live are generally confident in their ability to kind of like get through it. So yeah.
And if you're not confident in your ability to get through it, fake it till you become it, because that's absolutely what I did. And 6 months later, I'm still going live every week. And now I'm like, I don't give a shit. I'm like, this is what I'm going to talk about. This is what people need to hear right now. And go from there. And it works. Yeah.
What are the benefits that I'm interviewing you now. What are the benefits that you're seeing from going live every week? Are you really reaping the benefits?
Again, it's building that trust and familiarity is really what I'm seeing. So I got a lot of DMs after I go live, and people are saying, oh, I watched your live. I had somebody book a call with me last week who'd watched one of my lives, and like, I swear, like somebody described it yesterday, like a fisherman's wife. Wife, like a fish wife. I swear, like a fish wife, right? So she came on the call with me and she said, Deirdre, I want to work with you because you swear. But that was actually it. She was like, you're so frank and authentic. And when I go live, I have bullet points in terms of what I'm going to talk about. When I initially started going live, when I started my business, I was like a newsreader. I scripted everything I was going to say because I was shitting myself about going live, worried that I would say the wrong thing, that I might curse, that I might say too many ums or ahs and people would judge me. And now I'm like, okay, no, these are what I'm going to talk about. Let's see what comes when I talk about them and go from there. And it's much more natural because stories come to me or examples come to me and it just flows much nicer. So yeah, people, I think what I've experienced is that people then send me messages to say that really resonated with them. Thanks for that. It was really helpful. And people, it's trust. It really does build trust and familiarity as well because you're just your natural self.
Definitely. And I also think, if you've got a podcast or you're doing a LinkedIn live, people are like, oh, that person's quite a big deal. Like they're doing some really cool stuff. And it does give you a bit more credibility as well, I think, compared to other people in your industry potentially. I mean, that just reminds me, this is a tangent, but I promise it's relevant. It just reminds me, I did a live masterclass on somebody else's masterclass last week. It was in the evening. I was really tired. Literally, I fucked this entire thing up. I was talking for about 20 minutes. I had this beautiful QR code that I designed that I was going to put on the screen at the end for people to click it, and then they would go to get my lead magnet. It was all beautiful, and I was like, yay. And then I realized this lead magnet did not go, not go to where it was supposed to go. Fucked it up completely. It was all over my words, and I literally had 2 people afterwards going, oh my god, that was so much fun. You're literally no bullshit. You don't care. I love to work with you. This is great. I'm like, oh well, fine then. Okay, whatever. So it doesn't matter. Be you. It's all good.
Absolutely. I love that. That's a great example, Becky. One thing that I'm curious about as well for you is like, and in your experience, because let's say with those people, when you're live with them and capturing things like that, like should you put QR codes up on your LinkedIn lives? Because you can do that with StreamYard and Restream. Is that something you would suggest, or what are your thoughts on that? So that basically you can move attendees who you can't really tell who they are from watchers to leads or clients.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good idea. And I think that's probably the easiest way to get their information for sure. I did actually play around with hosting a LinkedIn Live as a business, as from my business page on LinkedIn, but I didn't get so much luck with it. And you can only do it when you get to a certain amount of followers. I mean, the premise is that people register and you actually capture their email addresses if you can do it from a business. But I didn't get anywhere near the amount of people registering that I do when people just went, yes, I'm attending. So people are obviously cautious about giving up their details in that instance. So I'd say probably do it like where they don't have to put their details in. And then, I mean, you have like the list of people who are attending anyway, so you can still speak to them and add them to your list as long as they agree. My dog is driving me crazy. Sorry if you can hear it in the background.
Can't hear him, but my robot Hoover is trying to find its way back to its base, and it's so you might be able to hear that in the background. The realities of recording live. This is
I know
exactly what happens. Yeah,
dogs and robo hoovers. I have one of them too. I couldn't live without it. It's amazing,
me
especially when you
either.
have dogs. I think
Exactly.
they're like they do go hand in hand, don't they?
So we're talking about the event attendees, right? And potentially capturing their email addresses. So for those who've registered, but you haven't captured their email addresses, did you ever, or what are your thoughts about having some sort of follow-up strategy with those people afterwards?
I did have a follow-up strategy as well. So I would then drop them a message the day after and say, oh, I hope you managed to make it live. What do you think? And get some feedback that way as well. And then if I know that I've got other events coming up, because I plan them a month at a time, that's the other thing I did actually. I do like a beginning of the month, I do a really nice carousel with like the 4 guests that were coming, or the 2 guests that were coming up that month, and a bit about them as well. So, even if they couldn't make it that one, it would then be an opportunity for me to say, oh, I've actually got this person coming on next week. You might really like this because we're talking about something that's relevant for you. So yeah, just keep touching base and keep nurturing them for sure.
I love that. I love that. And Becky, I'd love to know, did you or have you had a guest or some real world example of where someone basically came on your LinkedIn Live and they totally fucking crushed it? And if they did, what was so different about them? Like, what did they do differently that made them crush it?
Oh gosh, this is a very good question. I've got my YouTube channel up now, so I'm just having a little look back to see. I did have a lady, she's Canadian. I mean, that's a great start, right? Canadians are just amazing. Love
I
them.
love Canadians.
All Canadians. Never met one I don't like, ever.
Me too.
Ever.
Me
I
too.
love
They're
them.
so friendly, right?
So friendly, really dry, dark sense of humour, which is just like me. Brilliant to work with. I wish all my clients were Canadians. Anyway, so she was Canadian, and we'd met at an event a couple of months previously, and we, you just get on with somebody so well, and we literally had loads of banter, and we were just ripping the piss out of each other, and it was just lovely. So we just flowed so nicely, and I think it's that kind of camaraderie that you can get, which is really, really good. And I felt like it was a very equal split with the chatting as well, which was good.
So do you think it's worthwhile then to have a conversation with the guest before the event, before you go live, so you can kind of see what that chemistry is going to be like? Or
yeah, if you can, yes. Yeah. I've made that mistake where I haven't done it, and it's been a bit of a shit show, to be fair. It's not been great because I didn't really know the person that well. So yeah, they would be within my circle on LinkedIn, so I'd have a rough idea of what they were going to be like. But if I didn't know them very well, then I'd like schedule a 20-minute conversation just to see what the chemistry is going to be like for sure.
Interesting. Okay, great. Let me see. What else do I think that people listening might want to hear? I'm thinking actually you've touched on YouTube and email in terms of repurposing the stuff that you've done and how you use it to nurture people. But do you have any other suggestions about how you could take your LinkedIn Live and repurpose it for more long-term value?
That is a good question. So email, YouTube. I think chopping them up into social clips was really, really useful. So I had a video editor that was doing an incredible job for me, where he'd like pick out those bits that were like maybe a bit controversial, or like Stephen Bartlett does for his podcast, where it's almost like half of a conversation in the beginning, and that I think that's really, really nice when you can do that. What else could you do with them? I'm just thinking. Then I didn't do anything else, but I'm just thinking what else you could do. I mean, maybe you could even chop them up into little clips and then send them if you wanted to do some cold outreach. You could even go, oh, why don't you check out this little clip of me doing XYZ on LinkedIn Live? We spoke about this, and that credibility factor is coming across again.
Cool. I think one of the things I've noticed, Becky, I don't know if you found the same, and I used to hear this all the time when I worked in the bank. There's a local radio station, and the guy who runs it, we would have been doing advertising with him, and he would always say that women were really reluctant to come on and do guest interviews on the radio show. And yesterday I did a rapid fire marketing mastermind with a bunch of ladies. And it was interesting how some of them, they were really hesitant about getting in front of camera, about what they might say, and all of that sort of stuff. So what's the one thing that you might say to somebody, male, female, whatever, if they're really nervous or hesitant about doing a live?
Okay, so I think always be yourself and don't worry about it, because people will like you regardless. And even you come across even more human when you do make mistakes. So don't worry about it if you fuck up, because we all do that. I think for really, really nervous people, I mean, maybe do like a run through first of all, just like record yourself. Just so you've kind of got rid of that barrier, I think. And then you think, oh, maybe it's not that bad after all. But like you said, it's just practice. We're all scared in the beginning. It is nerve-wracking. But once you've done a few under your belt, it becomes so much easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, I agree. It's like you're just showing up to have a chat, or you're showing up to talk to your ideal clients, even if you're showing up by yourself. And one of my amazing guests I've had on the show, Maureen McCowan, she gave some simple strategies for presentations. And her simple thing was, and I really love this, Maureen, I'm going to be quoting you forevermore on this, was to show up and not talk about, how did she say it? It's not about telling people what you want to tell them. It's about telling people what they need to hear. So I'm like, I love that shift, because it's like showing up to serve instead of showing up to sell. It's so small, but it's so big.
Yeah, that is a really good shift. I really like that. And it is about doing a service, isn't it, at the end of the day? Yeah,
absolutely. Right, Becky, tell me, is there anything else about LinkedIn or LinkedIn Lives that I haven't asked you that you think listeners might benefit from learning?
Oh, okay. What else do you need to know? So we've covered how to get guests on, how to get them and then get them to become a client. That's always nice as well. I love that twofold thing. What else? I would just say, ultimate advice is get your back end stuff sorted well. So really as good as the back end, how it all works. And I think I said to you before, like, I had it so that it was just systemized and it was lovely. And really the only thing I had to do was turn up and interview people, which is just a dream, not having to get involved with any of the rest of it. So, but once you have got those processes and the automation set up and the emails that are going out, then it is just easy. It is really easy.
Can I ask you to explain what that process was in a bit more detail, so that if people decide that they want to go and do this, that they have it running as seamlessly as you did?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would have planned it a couple of months before, start kind of like looking at who I wanted to interview. I didn't really have it in terms of themes or anything like that. It was just kind of an organic process. Think, oh, that person might be really good. I'll get them on. Say I'd got my 2 for the month. We'd set up in Canva the post that was going to go out for that guest, and then the sequence would set up. So I would book the appointment on my Calendly, which went into my Google Calendar, and then in that there would be an email linked to the guest, and then it would say, please use this as a placeholder. You will be sent the StreamYard link closer to the time. And then once my VA had then set all the events up on StreamYard, she would then copy and paste that link into the appointment so that they had that ready to go. And, that email just included everything that they needed to know about it. And then we had another email go out a little bit closer to the time to say, this is coming up, don't forget, tech stuff, yada, yada, yada. And I think that there was one more thing. After the event, the guest got an email to say, thank you so much for coming on. I'd really love it if you'd give me a review. That worked really, really well as well. So I got loads of reviews, LinkedIn reviews on the back of it, just to say they had a lovely time and, talking about my interview style as well, which was lovely. So that was kind of it from that point of view. And then the other automations were that I'd have like a script that I'd send out to the guests. Sorry, not the guests, the event attendees about a day before, and then that would go out. But it was all scripted and customized, so it was ready to go, really.
And those messages, were they automated or were they sent manually?
They were sent manually, but it was a case of copying and pasting. My VA did that. Quite easy to do, it didn't take that long. I don't think there is a way to automate them, is there? Yeah, sadly.
Oh, I don't know. Let me think. Actually, yes, there is, maybe with tools like Dripify or Meet Alfred. I think if you copy and paste the attendee list, you could potentially create one thing and it will automatically send them.
Ah, okay. Well, that's cool. Yeah, you would know more about that than me because I know you're up on the tools. But even if you've got like 50, 80 people, copying and pasting one message in, too long to do.
Yeah, 10 minutes, done.
Yeah,
cool. Becky, I knew it was going to be epic. I was right. Thank you. Folks, for those of you listening, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about going live on LinkedIn, whether it's something you're going to do, not do. Tell me in the comments beneath wherever you're listening today. Becky, tell us what's coming up for you and where can people reach out to you and find you?
So I'm just wrapping up the second week of my Magic Mind, which has been called Spice, which has been lovely. That's been a 2-week Telegram container with female entrepreneurs who want to get their voices out there. So we've been I've been dropping in daily riffs and voice notes, and I've been talking to them about tips on how to come across as more themselves and get their content a bit spicier to draw in their target audience. I'm going to be running my second round of that in March. That's been lovely. And then I'm also working on a one-to-one mentorship offer as well to work with businesses on their messaging and content. I am mostly on LinkedIn, but I'm also on Instagram. I'm dabbling with Instagram and learning its algorithms, and it's been a challenge, but I'm getting there.
Good for you. And I love the spice, Becky. Bring the heat, folks. I love it. Definitely go and check her out and check out what that program might look like for you in March if that's something that you want to do. Becky, thank you for joining us. Such a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. It's been lovely.
Woo! Let's recap because that was packed with gold. So here are your takeaways first and foremost. If you want more eyes on your LinkedIn Live, you need a solid promotional strategy. Don't just go live and hope for the best like I was doing. Keep your audience engaged with interactive elements. Encourage comments, questions, and real-time conversations. And the biggest mistake? Not repurposing your content. Use snippets, blog posts, and emails to get more mileage out of every live session that you do. And if you want a high impact action, think about what you can do to actually fill seats for your next LinkedIn Live. Start by creating an irresistible event title that sparks curiosity and intrigues people so it makes people feel they need to show up. Implement that this week. Go connect with Becky on LinkedIn and check out her upcoming programs. Her links are in the show notes. And if you're ready to turn your LinkedIn strategy into a client generating machine, let's chat. Loved this episode, which I hope you did. Please do me a favour and share it with your network. Tag me on LinkedIn and let's keep the conversation going. And don't forget to rate, review and follow the show wherever you're streaming from today. Your support helps us reach more people, more entrepreneurs just like you, ready to make the first 100k or first 1 million in their business. Until next time, keep mastering your business.